Many people enjoy keeping reptiles just for the sake of keeping an interesting pet, and that is totally okay. And many animals live a great life. But for some people, their fascination for nature, and in this case herpetofauna, shapes and influences a big part of their life and the choices they make. For instance, their career path, or the vacation destinations, or some of the projects they start. Guillem, the guest who is going to join us in this episode, gives us a great insight into his path within herpetoculture, and we also talk about the connection between herpetoculture and herpetology, the impact of keeping venomous snakes. We get a glimpse into Spanish herpetoculture and a whole lot more. This was a really fun episode to do for Flo and myself, and I hope you guys will enjoy it as much as we did.
I'll do the intro.
Oh, that would be nice. Yeah, you do a lot of YouTube videos, Guillem. How do you feel about the intro of the videos?
Like for a podcast, I understand, but for other videos, I don't do intros. Maybe I'll do the intro about what is gonna happen, but I don't do a set intro. I think that a lot of people, if they don't like the intro, they just leave.
Yeah, that's a good
one.
For
a podcast, I think it's important.
For me, it's the most awkward part.
Oh yeah, it's awkward as hell. When I do the Instagram one, I have to force myself to do them because it's like, hi guys. Don't worry, I understand totally the awkwardness.
Perfect.
We don't watch it.
No, just do this like nobody's watching. Okay. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the European Herpetoculture Podcast. A podcast where we explore European herpetoculture, as you might have thought already. And first of all, I think the podcast has started doing pretty well. So thank you everybody for all your positive feedback. And you could really help us grow by, interacting with us. We really like that. So that's something I wanted to say from the start. So we have that done. Today I'm Stefan, your host, and we have Guillem joining us.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome. And our co-host is Flo.
Hola.
Hola, yeah. I tried to learn Spanish via Duolingo.
Don't worry about it. I don't even, if you don't say I'm Spanish, no one would notice. I don't look Spanish at all.
And you look, actually, you're in the UK now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it fits perfectly almost.
Yeah, I want to say the same thing, man.
I'm actually half British and half Spanish. My mom's British, but I was born and raised in Spain, so that's why I don't have British accent. I'm a hybrid.
Both worlds.
Perfect. Guillem, the reason we invited you for this podcast is I've been following your work for a while now, and I really liked all the trips you did, and you seem to have an interesting job. Next to that, you're from Spain, which is a country we haven't covered during this podcast yet. So I thought it was a perfect guest for us. And before we're gonna get in the details and the reason why you're on here, maybe it's cool for the people who are listening to know who you are and how you got started in this hobby. So is there anything you could say about that?
Well, as who I am is technically I'm a zoologist now. I graduated, so I would say I'm a zoologist, a zookeeper right now. I work. That's my current job. But I'm basically a passionate reptile keeper and reptile enthusiast, and I enjoy all the different branches in herpetology, like captive breeding, traveling herping, and also research and science. And well, I started as a young kid, as everyone, so the same story, liking animals since we were kids. But when I did my jump was when I was about 11. We moved to a house that I had a garden, and we lived next to the forest, so I could go out and catch snakes and newts and frogs and lizards and everything. And that set my passion like to another level. And then when I was 14, they allowed me to get my first chameleon. And from then is when I started to keep reptiles in captivity. And since then, I never looked back. I always kept reptiles. In one way or another, I've been involved with reptiles since then. And I'm 33 now. So yeah, it's been nearly 20 years it's going to be. I started actually when I was 13, so it's technically 20 years now that I've been involved with reptiles.
That's awesome.
That's cool, man. Were there any moments for you that you were like, yeah, this is it? You know, you've obviously always been fascinated by nature, and you go out into nature when you can, it seems, at least. And your study and your job all revolves around nature. Were there some moments you were like, yeah, this is it, you know, this is what I want to do, or this is so cool, or I want to keep doing this?
It was more like there was a period of time when I was 18, 19, that I was not sure I was going to pursue this as a job or as a career. So I started to work in a pet shop, a reptile shop. And then when I finished my contract there, I was without a job for a few months, and I didn't know what to do. I was thinking about maybe I'll just get to a profession that actually pays good to a certain level. And I was like, oh, I love cars and motorbikes at that time. I said, maybe I'm going to become a mechanic or a car salesman or something like that. And then I was lucky that my uncle knew a man that was working with birds of prey. And it was in Menorca, in one of the Balear Islands. It's not Mallorca or Ibiza, it's Menorca, which is the quiet one. And he had a bird of prey show for hotels and tourists and stuff like that. And they need someone who spoke a bit of English and Spanish at the same time. And I worked there for a summer. And when I finished, I just thought like, I actually want to just work with animals the rest of my life in one way or another. After that summer, it was like, yeah, no chance. I'm going somewhere else. And it was actually that moment I decided, as soon as I moved back home, that September, there was a course that they call technician for herpetoculture technician or herpetology technician. I don't know how to translate it. It was the first time that they were doing it in Madrid, in the capital, and it was together with the university and the zoo, the couple of zoos that we have there in Madrid. And I did that, and since that was the thing that made me jump to a professional career, like when I managed to get into the zoo world and as a zookeeper and everything like that.
Man, that's cool. It's like you said your uncle had the bird of prey. It's like the other part of your family, someone is working with animals, or was it just your uncle?
No, my uncle had a very good friend that
friend.
he was working with as a falconer. He used to work for airport management and stuff like that, and then he just trying to branch by himself. And it was this time that I was 18. I was at home. I didn't have job, but I didn't have studies because I left high school when I was 18. Actually, I never finished actually my education at the beginning. I picked up 10 years later when I was 27. So yeah, my mom was like, get the hell out of my house already. You are old enough now. So I was in the situation that I need to do something. My uncle offered to
yeah, that's cool.
His house and to move there and a job, and so that woke me up a little bit and inspired me to continue doing things.
Yeah, that's great.
And you are a zoologist now, you said? So you started your study then?
Yeah. So after that, I started to work as a zookeeper in different companies. So I went to work, I did this course during the year. And then when I finished, there was an open position for a zookeeper in Cyprus, which was a weird location, but we knew somebody from Spain who was a curator there of, not reptiles, the general curator, and they need somebody for reptiles. And yeah, that moment I was like, yeah, sure. I was 22 and I said, I have nothing to lose. I'll go to Cyprus for whatever were the conditions or the salary. I went there, and from there I started working other jobs in the following years. And there was a point that I realized that I wanted to be involved. And actually it was when I was living in the Netherlands. I was working in the Naturalis, the museum, taking care of the reptile collection that was there for a year, the H.P, I don't know how to pronounce that. Yeah. So I was the manager of that collection that time, and they had the snake bite symposium in 2018, I think it was, and 2017 or 2018. I'm not. Yeah, 2018. And I met a lot of a lot of people, like scientists and researchers, that they were coming into the expo, and we were talking, and they asked me to milk some snakes for them, to get some tissue for molecular studies. And I was feeling like super pumped to be around these people, but at the same time, I didn't understand anything of what they were talking when we were going out, having dinner together and stuff like that. So I felt like, oh, I'm just the handyman, like the guy who handles snakes, who takes care of the dangerous bit, and then they do the cool science, So I felt like a bit, oh, I should do something. And I met cool people that time that they give me good recommendations what to do, and I end up going to the UK, specifically in Bangor, which is in Wales, and it's the only place in the UK where they have a degree in zoology, but with a specialization of herpetology. So you do certain subjects on your second and third year and dissertation that they are specific for herpetology, and we have like herpetologists that they run the course, like Wolfgang Worster and Anita Malhotra, which are quite notorious in the scientific world related to reptiles and venomous snakes, especially, which was what I was mostly interested. So yeah, I came here, and I've been in September. It's gonna be 5 years now that I've been here, and I graduated. I'm doing a master's now, a research master's, which I'm just finishing in the next month. I don't know how long it's gonna take me to write the thesis. But yeah, I've been since then here, and now I started to work last year. I started while I was doing my master's into a small zoo here, a small zoo collection with a reptile collection.
Man, that's quite a journey. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But this is like, did you all over this period of time, did you have like animals always
So
at home, or?
There was like a period when I was when I was in Cyprus, I didn't have any animal at home because I had so many animals at work that I couldn't think. Cyprus was a bit of a difficult situation because it was the laws there, they are a bit different. So your weekly work is 6 days a week, 1 day off. There are a lot of hours because the weather, for example, in the summer, I had to start to work at 7 a.m. and then we finish at 11 in the morning. And we had like 4-hour break because it was so hot that we couldn't work. And then we had to go back at 2 or 3 and work till 7 in the afternoon. So it was almost a 12-hour shift because I didn't have car at some points of that period. So I couldn't keep anything really. But when I moved back, which technically I moved for like a few months, I started to keep again, and then they sent me with a company. I started to work. So I'll explain you because it's a bit complicated this bit. I work for a company in Spain which is called Grupo Atrox, which what they do is they make reptile exhibits, venomous reptile exhibits for zoos, and they work as a third party because, for example, a zoo in Spain, if they want to have venomous snakes, it's easier to hire somebody who brings their own keepers, their own animals, and all the system already built with anti-venom, the protocols, rather than to train their own staff and pay their own insurances and everything. So they hire this company and they make the expos. So I started to work with them, and they got the international exhibits. And so I ended up working in Brussels, in Belgium, for a year there. Then I moved to the Netherlands, and I worked for another year. And then I ended up, last year I was in Paris, in France. So I work with them. It's the same company, but in 3 different locations in 3 different countries. And when I moved to Belgium, the Netherlands, and France, yeah, I kept reptiles there again because, especially in the Netherlands, I kept a lot of venomous snakes because the laws, they were perfect for me, and I could keep venomous snakes still anywhere because technically they were at work. I could keep them in quarantine area and everything. But yeah, in the Netherlands, I kept them home.
It's awesome. When did you start like working with venomous snakes? Was it around that time or earlier?
It was a bit earlier. Like Cyprus was mostly venomous snakes only. I already had an interest on venomous snakes. The only thing that in Spain it was, well, it's still very difficult to keep venomous snakes legally. So before I started the course, I barely had any experience. I had experience with some people who kept snakes, but very briefly. But then during the course, I actually was staying longer than, so if we had to go till 5 p.m. every day to do practice, I stayed till 7 or 8, and the keepers there, they start to teach me a little bit extra things that they were not supposed to. And I started to get a bit of experience, and then they sent me to Cyprus. And Cyprus, when I arrived there, I didn't expect the amount of venomous snakes that they had. It was crazy for such a small, well, it's not a small zoo, but it's quite a small zoo. They had like 75, 80 animals, and probably 60 of them, they were venomous snakes, including 9 species of cobras, black mambas. They have Gila monsters and stuff like that. But yeah, that is what I guess I got the most experience. And since then, I started to work with venomous snakes and non-stop.
Yeah. Awesome. And you still keep venomous snakes, or just
No. I keep them in Spain in a collection together with a friend that I have, but I don't personally keep them myself.
Okay.
Well, when I moved from the Netherlands and from Paris, I transferred all the animals I had at that moment to this collection with my friend, because he had the permits and the space and everything. So we moved it there, and I still work with him and everything, but I don't keep them here in the UK. Mostly because I've been a all this time, so the housing is not my own house. So I have to apply for a permit and everything. For the moment, I left it in standby, the venomous snake keeping. But yeah, I enjoy actually more keeping other animals at home as a personal collection than venomous snakes. I like to work with venomous snakes. I like to travel and find venomous snakes, but as a hobby or as a collection, as a keeper, I prefer mostly lizards.
Yeah,
that's interesting to me. Could you maybe explain why? Because
I don't know. I feel like being able to separate venomous snakes from my work and from my private life, it gives me much more peace, because I go to work and I'm fully focused and I'm in it. If I would keep them at home, or I would have them all the time at home, I would feel more relaxed at certain moments. So I would, I've been like quite thorough with my career with keeping snakes. I handle a lot, but I barely had any incident. I didn't have a clean slate, but I barely had any problem. I was like fully unfocused. Like I have ADHD, and maybe when I'm talking to you, you'll realize that I'm going to different topics, or I'm like not paying attention to certain things. But when I work with snakes, I always call with my friends. I always say, "Oh, I have the chip. I have a button here that said venomous snake tag, boom," and I never left a door open. I never left anything like unattended or anything like that, and always fully focused on it. So that's my time to work with venomous snakes. But when I'm at home, I'm much more relaxed. I'm like at sofa, and then I say, "Oh, I have to do this," and it's more easy that you can have a problem, and also it gives me less mental peace. If I have to, I don't know, take an eye cap from a stock shed, it's like I'm at home now. I'm with my pajamas, and I have to do this, and I don't know. And also because at the end of the day, venomous snakes, they are snakes, and I enjoy much more the keeping of lizards. I think that their behavior and display on a terrarium is much more interesting. I enjoy more making the cage, and I like to go at night on my geckos and open the cage and put my hand inside without having to think if I'm gonna die or not, if I make a mistake, So it makes it much easier. And I also live with my girlfriend now here, and I don't feel like it's fair for her to have her animals and my animals if they would be a venomous snake.
Yeah. That's interesting, man. I think the reason I also ask this is because I don't think some people realize the impact that keeping venomous snakes has, next to the fact that it's potentially a risk. But like you say, you need to be on, and what you've shown in the short talk already, that maybe thanks to or due to or this hobby, let's put that in between brackets. You have had such a journey already, and you also travel a lot. And if you're away from home and having to think about those potentially dangerous animals that are alone with your girlfriend, wouldn't give me the rest
mental
I deserve.
peace, Yeah, exactly. And not only for like my girlfriend, but for example, the last few travels, my girlfriend came with me because she's also, we met here at uni and she's also a herpetologist and interested in reptiles. I'm not bragging.
Okay.
She kept reptiles before we met and everything. Um, but it was so easy to find a friend of mine that could take care of her, even though I don't have a, like a massive collection now, but I have a few things that I need to explain them, like some geckos and some lizards that they need a bit more care than others. But it was easy to find somebody who, because a lot of students here keep reptiles. But if I would have a venomous snake collection right now, I know one person maybe that could keep them properly or would have the experience, you know. And most of the times I travel with him also, so yeah, it's not convenient. There's a lot of aspects that people don't think on. Oh, I would like to keep a gaboon viper one day. So like you don't really want to keep a gaboon viper. You know, you say it because you don't know the whole connotation of keeping a venomous snake at home. And as I said, and not only these kind of things, but like the mental piece of like being at home and not having to worry about certain things. And I understand like a lot of people enjoy keeping venomous snakes, and I'm not opposed at keeping venomous snakes. And probably down the road when I have my own place, I will keep some venomous snakes, but I know I'll have it in a way that it won't affect my day-to-day life, you know.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we already talked a little bit about your travels, but you've done some amazing travels. I see the macrolepis in the background,
Yeah.
which is like a holy grail to me. Did you already travel before you started your study, or did it all just evolve together?
So I always wanted to travel, but when I was younger, the problem I had is that where I live, I didn't have friends that would join me to travel, and I was too scared to go by myself when I was 19, 20, which is stupid because right now I would go by myself without waiting anyone. But so I lost a lot of time, in my opinion, during that period of time that I was also trying to start my own professional career in the zoo world, and also because I didn't have financial stability at that time. Like, I lived in Cyprus and I helped a lot in Cyprus, but I couldn't afford to do a travel till later on. I got a better kind of job. I traveled before I started to study a few places like Thailand. I went to Arizona, and then I did few European trips, but not really heavily. And then when I started to study, I thought, oh, this is the perfect time because have free summers. I'll be studying during the winter and I'll have free summer. And what happened the first year? I got a lot of money because I got student finance. And at the same time, because I've been used to work for 10 years, I said, oh, I'll work alongside my study. So I managed to save a lot of money and COVID hit. So I got stuck the first summer at home. And that changed me a lot on the way to decide what to do next because I was like, imagine that I cannot travel again. All the things that I miss, you know, like at that time it was so uncertain what was going to happen. Travel was closed for any kind of leisure. So I was like, oh, if I want to go to the other side of the world, I won't be able, and blah blah blah. So at the moment that they open again, traveling, I'll just go to all the places I always dreamed about and talk so much. One day. Tomorrow is that day, I said, and I said like, I'll have time later on to save for a house or for whatever I need to travel now and experience all these things that I always dreamed about. And yeah, first year when they opened, because it was quite restricted, the traveling, I just did some trips to Spain. I went 2 or 3 times in the same summer, and I tried to find all the vipers and different animals that I wanted to find there. And then the year later, I went to where did I go? Yeah, I went to Costa Rica. I went to India. I went to Morocco twice. I went back to India, um, and then I went to the Philippines also this year. I'm going next month to Arizona again, and then in January I'm going to Borneo also. So yeah, I said I'm going to all the places I want to go now. Yeah.
That's crazy. And first of all, it's like an awesome mindset that you have. Like you can save still money later and do like the adult stuff later. That's sometimes stuff that I'm missing. Like I need to get more in this kind of mindset too. Yeah, man, I'm young at the moment. I should do like travel stuff. Yeah, but what was your like favorite place to go to, or maybe what place did get you like the craziest input or something?
Mm,
Maybe you can talk
I
about that.
think Costa Rica was the one that I enjoyed the most.
Mm.
In terms of, like I always said, I divide my trips in different goals. For example, if I want to find one specific animal like the macrolepis, you have to know that you're not gonna find much more if you find your goal, because where you go it might be super specific. So the biodiversity that you have around there is not crazy because you just go for that. But Costa Rica is so biodiverse that even though you are looking for a target species, like in my case was um, the Bothriechis nigroviridis. I don't know what's the blotch palm pit viper. I think it's called in the common name. It's very difficult to say common names.
That's okay. We don't do common names here.
Yeah, okay, fine. Bothriechis nigroviridis. But that was like few days that we spent looking for that snake. But along the rest of the trip, we found so many things. And I was telling to my friend, the amount of things we found, that some of them are like amazing targets. We could go again and do another list of targets of things that we haven't found. And it would still be an amazing trip. So that one for me was my favorite in terms of variety. And also because, that was another thing I wanted to talk about, terrariums and stuff. It just gave me a scope about how to keep reptiles not in a different way, but to feel the humidity levels, to see the temperatures, how the ventilation work a little bit, because it can be hot, but at the same time it didn't feel like suffocating. The plants also. For me, one thing that I enjoy the most, I'm not like a super knowledgeable guy about plants, but I had so many pictures on my phone about different plants that I said, oh, I seen this in the garden center before, and look, they don't grow where we think that they grow. Or you see the way that bromeliads grow on the trees. Then we went quite high in the mountains also, Cerro de la Muerte, which was like nearly 2,000 meters above sea level. And you see the variety of vegetation, and you still have bromeliads there, but you see that they are different species from the ones that they are closer to the sea. And I don't know, all these kind of things help me a lot on how to decide later how to decor my terrariums and how to do better cages that they would be more useful for the animals.
Yeah, it's like so different when you go like in the wild and feel everything yourself. It's like you can read as much as you want. You can never hit the spot when you never like felt it, But how do you approach a herping trip? Like, I mean, you have like a target species. What are like some steps that you take before you go to the location that you want to?
So the thing is that usually now what I'm trying to do is trying to get the most species from my dream list or my top list, like especially I love Trimeresurus. It's my favorite genus. I did my university dissertation, my degree dissertation on genetics of Asian pit vipers, and I'm doing my master's right now on hybridization and geographic variation of Asian pit vipers, especially the Trimeresurus sensu stricto. And what I want to find now is all the Trimeresurus that I love, which was Macrolepis, my number 3. My number 2 was McGregory, which I found this last trip I did in the Philippines. And now the one I want to find is Malcolmi in Borneo, which will be in January. But in this case, I choose the locations depending these species. But for example, I say that I want to do other trips, but maybe I can do them much later when I'm a bit older or when I have a different kind of lifestyle. Because the way I say is like Komodo dragons, for example. I love to see Komodo dragons in the wild, but I can do that when I'm 50 also, because it's quite an easy trip. It's very accessible, it's easy, and you can do it even with family if you want. But for example, going to see the macrolepis, it's a bit more difficult. It's not impossible, but you have to drive a lot in India, which is like a high-risk sport to do that. You have to go high in the mountains, stay in a bit shitty places sometimes. That kind of trip, I want to do it now that I have energy, I'm young, and I'm motivated to this. And also, when I was in India, for example, I went to certain states that it's a bit more dangerous because there's terrorism and there's like a bit more like high rate of criminality, which maybe later on I won't be able to do in my life, or I won't feel the need of doing this kind of intense situations, you know. So right now I'm just going down the list a little bit and trying to choose what I want to see or what would I like to see. But at the same time, also, I like if I go with friends or some more people would want to go somewhere, I choose places that they are more biodiverse, like Costa Rica or even Borneo that I'm going for the Malcolm. It's super biodiverse in amphibian variation and many species of amphibian, other colubrids also and everything. So you don't go only for a target. Philippines, for example, was super, super specific. We found the three pit vipers that we were looking for, which was Trimeresurus flavomaculatus, McGregory, and Schulzei. But we barely seen much more apart of that. We were lucky that we hit each target. But in Palawan, for example, we arrived to a week that was supposed to be raining and it was super dry. And we only seen two Schulzei and one Dendrolaphis, nothing else in terms of snake, you know. In Batanes, where the McGregory come from, we saw the McGregory, we saw 12 of them from different colorations, which was amazing, but we saw Agoniosoma and nothing else also. And then in Luzon, we saw a few Tayas luzonensis. We saw Boiga Synodon and Aetula prasina, some Lycodon species and some other stuff, and Flavomaculatus. But as you see, a species list was not very extended, but it was a very specific trip focused on just finding the targets and traveling from island to island just for those things. But yeah, I always decide I want to see a lot of things of everything, or I always just want to go for very specific things. And that's the way I mostly do. And then from then on, you just do your homework. Like either I'm not ashamed to say I use sometimes guides, local guides from the area, because they are the best people to take you to the good places, and it's not sure that they're gonna show you what you find. But some other times I don't use them, and I said like, oh, I'll just go for myself and to the adventure, you know. And if you don't really care too much if you find it or not, for example, to find Schulzei and McGregory, we didn't use any guide. McGregory was more likely to be found because there's not much more in the island rather than McGregory. But yeah, the trip basically starts with I want to see a lot or I want to see one snake.
Yeah, that's smart. And do you go like before it on iNaturalist looking around where like hotspots are or talking to other herpers? How do you approach that?
iNaturalist sometimes it works, but in certain areas it doesn't really work, and especially if the species that you're looking is quite protected or secluded and everything, you're not finding much. But you have, I say always, Google Maps is amazing for finding good herping spots. And I speak with other people, but as you know, like certain things, not everyone is willing to tell you. So you have to do a bit of your own research. And if you come across somebody who's nice, or that's another thing, like do contacts always with people. And I share some spots sometimes to herpers that they are interested in seeing some animals I've seen. As long as I know kind of a little bit that they have good intentions, you know, like you have to understand that at some point you might need also a bit of help to find certain species. But yeah, speaking with people, checking on Google Maps, also habitat selection is important. Like most of in my case, I look for Trimeresurus when I go to Asia. They live near rivers and streams and stuff like that. So you can check on the maps and stuff like that. And another trick that maybe many people don't know is that if you look for reviews of people who are not herpers, sometimes they say like, "Oh yeah, we found this snake," and stuff. And for example, in Batanes in Philippines, there was a place it's called Japanese tunnels, which were World War II Japanese tunnels that they made there, because I think it was quite a strategic island there. There was a military base and everything. And I was reading them just to do something touristic while we were there during the day. And he said, "Oh, we wanted to go inside, but our guide told us that sometimes there's pit vipers, you know." And I was like, "Oh, that's a good spot." So we went there just to visit, and literally on the door there was a baby Trimeresurus McGregori resting on a root that was coming from the wall like that at this height. And I was like, "No way!" And it was there. So I check on Google reviews sometimes. Even on Facebook, I just put the name of the snake or the common name. I just go publication after publication, and sometimes like a random person said, "Oh, I found this snake in my garden," or walking my dog, and you check the location a little bit. You go on Google Maps, you compare the habitat and the vegetation, and then you can say like, "Okay, it might be an interesting spot to go and check it." And that's how I do a little bit of my research.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, it's like.
Go ahead, dear Flo.
Wait. Okay, that's gone. Sorry. Yeah, sometimes what I just like not found out, but what I use like for the Enya Louise, for example, like check out what the locals calls the animals. And oftentimes they have like weird names for the snakes or
Yeah.
for the lizards that you're looking for. That's also like on Facebook or something, and you find like random people posting pictures with like a rare species or something.
Yeah. Knowing a little bit of the language, it helps.
Yeah,
a
for
lot
sure.
when you're looking for spots. And also speaking with locals, once you go there and you go to the town, and many times they ask you, "What you doing?" or they see you with a snake hook, and you can just say like, "Oh, we're looking for snake. Have you seen one?" And they say, "Yeah." And sometimes it's a hit and miss, you know. They say, "Yeah, come." Like I had a friend that he was telling me the story that they had to go up a hill. It was so steep, and for like an hour and a half they walked because this woman told them that he saw a snake inside a dead tree, and they walked with her, and there was a bit of language barrier, and they walked all the way up with her. She pointed at the tree, and they looked. There was no snake, and they said, "But when did you see it?" He said, "Oh, last year I saw it." You know? It was a bit like, well, we are not interested in last year. We're interested in today. And we had feel like every time in India it was very common. Every time we walk in a field, it's like, "Oh yeah, my friend caught a cobra." And I said, "When was that?" I said, "Oh, in November, you know, and we are there in June." Like, yeah. Thank you.
That's crazy. Yeah.
That's amazing, man. It really sounds you need to do some detective work.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like, yeah.
Yeah. But it all sounds like you had a real open mind towards everything within this hobby, and that way you got to experience a whole lot of different stuff. I'm sure that with the study and with the people you are meeting now, that also opens up some doors with the job you have. And yeah.
Sorry, I thought you were gonna finish. Tell me.
No, I'll finish. No, but in the meantime, you're also doing a YouTube channel also now.
Yeah. I started the YouTube
start?
channel. I started the channel. What was it? 2021, I think. But it was every year I do like a New Year resolution. I know it sounds like quite like how you say corny to say that, but yeah, every year I said, "Oh, this year I'll try to do this." You know, was a goal. And in 2020 or 2021 was to speak on camera, because I used to do a lot of things, but people was, "Oh, you should film that." I was like, "No, I'm shy to speak in front of camera." It was not I was shy. I was like quite insecure about certain things, especially one thing that was difficult for me was my accent when I speak in English. I have a strong Spanish accent, and right now I'm very proud of it because it just shows that where I come from when I speak another language apart of English. But at the time, I was like, I don't know how to pronounce these words and do this and do that, and then I'm awkward in front of camera. So I said, this year I'm gonna do a YouTube channel, and I'm gonna film stuff, like just to try, and just wanted to bring something interesting that maybe I'm not changing anything, but in the Spanish hobby, there was not many people doing YouTube at that time. There's now more people doing, but in herpetoculture, not really many. And if there's some Mexico and Central American people that they do quite a lot. But in my opinion, there's a lot that they are not at the level that I consider like good herpetoculture. So I thought, well, I have quite a lot of experience I didn't want to like be too cocky about it, but I was like, I feel myself like I'm experienced enough now to talk about how to keep reptiles to a certain level. You know, I might not be the best or an expert, but that together with the studies I was getting at the time, it helped me how to do the research, how to approach certain problems, how to find out scientific sources to to talk about certain issues on the herpetoculture, like things like understanding how UVB works for a reptile. If you can say, yeah, you need the UVB and calcium, you know, but you don't really understand how it works a little bit, the whole cycle, you shouldn't be speaking about it, you know. So that time I thought, oh, maybe I'll do a channel. I'll try to approach to combine work, studies, life, plus YouTube, and especially at the beginning when you're starting, that it doesn't pay anything at all. And even later, now I'm monetized since a few months ago. It barely pays anything, to be honest. It's such a niche. Sorry, it's such a niche topic also that it's a bit difficult sometimes to make it big. But yeah, it's just something that I like to do it as a side. It helps me a lot to connect with people and being always talking with people of the hobby or helping also people and everything. And it opened more doors than closed them. To be honest, you always have like people criticizing a little bit because it's like, well, you're doing this more like for the camera or for the fame or this, but one thing I realized, I'm not in high school anymore, so I don't really care about what other people think. So you cannot be 30 and thinking, oh, what my friends from my town will say about if I speak in a funny way or I do this. It doesn't matter. The thing is to try to do something.
I feel like the people who speak, I feel like the people who have something to say about the accent or whatever, or none of them are English or American viewers.
Yeah.
It's always somebody who, in most cases, English is not their first language either, you know, so we are very critical of others. But it sounds really cool, man. It sounds like you really like just expanding your view and the things you do and all the aspects within this. It sounds like all of this is pretty important to you.
Yeah, it is actually. I always say like, it's not a hobby for me at this point. It's like a lifestyle, you know, like, yeah, sometimes it sounds very stupid, but it is actually. I think about reptiles a lot, and most of the things I do is related to animals. Obviously, I have friends that they are not reptile related, and I do other things. But yeah, I always thought that you cannot close your mind. I obviously have certain views on the hobby and things that I don't want this kind of stuff, you know, or I don't want to have any kind of relation with these other things. But yeah, I always say like you have to be pretty open because I met many people and some friends that they are like, oh no, I just hardcore keeping reptiles or hardcore herping, or I don't want to. One thing that I try to explain to the Spanish keepers is like how important is, I call it herpetoculture with herpetology, like that they need to go like hand in hand, like learning about, because one video I did it's not that they did quite good, but I had a lot of good reviews from people that I consider important in my career or my path, or I consider them like my mentors.
Yeah.
It was one about my abronias, how I approach when I do a terrarium, all the research I do and everything. And I was trying to explain to the people how important it is to know where your animal comes from in order to do a good terrarium, and things even like plants that people just put whatever plant they want. And it's fine. Most of the times it doesn't matter, but there's certain animals like abronias that they benefit from having plants like tillandsias or bromeliads, because their behavior in the wild, how they live in the wild, it really helps them to have a better display also behavior. So I was like, you cannot just put, I don't know, a Rhacodactylus ciliatus, a Corellophus ciliatus with bromeliads. You can do it, it doesn't affect, but I don't feel like it brings the same, or it gives them the same benefit inside the cage as maybe extra branches would give, or thin branches, which is what they would have in the wild, So I was trying to explain them how important it is to actually know, not science, but like a bit more of herpetology, of where your animal comes from, in order to level up in herpetoculture. And that is not one thing or the other. It's not like, oh no, I just keep animals in captivity. And I also have a lot of relation with people who are herpetologists that, I don't like people who close animals in cages, I think that it's important to have an open mind, and obviously with certain boundaries. But I always feel like if I learn a little bit of everything, it would help me when I'm older to be a bit more wise, about more topics and more things, rather than if I just focus in something and I don't listen to anyone else.
Yeah, that's smart. I think it's like a big, like, how do you say it? A lot of people that keep reptiles is like they're not really looking into how the animal should be kept. It's like always, oh, new animal, new animal, new animal. And when you break it down, it's like you can do so much just with 1, 2, 3 species and make it like perfect. But like you said, like always the same plants and stuff like that. And when you really like focus on a few species that you have and see how they interact in nature, and even watch videos, go on a naturalist, stuff like that, you see that they maybe also need a certain plant to really show off their behavior. And yeah, that's like, I really hope this gets better over time, because like even now all the YouTubers are always like, here's a new animal. The displays are getting like good and better, but like it's always the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's a little bit sad, in my opinion. Yeah, but
it's true. It's true. To be honest, sorry to say.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
What was Florian talking about, that in the beginning of my career, I was not watching too much YouTube. And when I moved back to the UK, I started to watch a lot of YouTube because my girlfriend also was showing me videos of British herpers and stuff like that. But I stumbled across 2 channels, and it's not because you are here, but one was Terrarium channel, and the other was Animals at Home podcast, which I think I don't remember if it's when you did your interview with them on Animals podcast that I found your channel later, or it was at the same time. But yeah, I found those channels and I was like, oh damn, maybe I should start to keep reptiles, because I said, I'm not gonna keep anything when I moved to the UK. But then because before I used to watch more Spanish YouTube, and because I was in Spain, I didn't have the same algorithm maybe. But when I moved to the UK, I started to get recommendations of your channel, Animals at Home, Reptiles and Research, and stuff like that. And it opened me a lot, my mind, about how to keep reptiles in a different way, which I might have had from the zoo world a little bit, but I never imported it to my home hobby and my house hobby. So I started to say, oh, maybe you can do a lot of more things, like Florian was saying, with the same thing, and started to see a little bit more how people were keeping animals, how to research a little bit more further into their habitat, and it just literally sparked that I don't know how you say that light inside me again to enjoy keeping reptiles, because I was quite fed up of keeping reptiles at home. I was like, you go to that cycle that Dylan from Animals at Home, I remember that video that he said, that cycle about, I get a new animal, I get excited, and then it dies down, and say, I get another animal, and you just go through that cycle over and over, and just looking things different, and started to watch other people, how they keep and stuff, wanted me to make better. And I still have like quite a few animals, I would say, but it's not, I don't need to get new animals all the time in order to fulfill I get more excited now about doing new terrariums for my animals. Or if you ask me, which animal is a dream animal you would have in your list, it's not more about the animal itself, but it's more about the terrarium I could do for them. I would literally keep an animal that is quite common, but it's like, their habitat is so complex and interesting that you could do this cage that like a swamp cage. Imagine having at home a terrarium that looks like a swamp, for example. Uh, so I get more excited about that rather than the fact of keeping this new animal. I always say, like, many of my friends said, "Oh, have you seen so and so that got a Tropidolemus latissinctus?" And I was like, "Yeah, but the only difference between you and him is that he has 5,000 euros to spend on that animal. Like, if you come in 3 years and say, "Oh, have you seen that he bred them twice already and that has this amazing cage and that," I would say, like, "Oh, I respect so much that." But having a new animal, in my opinion, is just a matter of money and space, but not always knowledge or experience.
Yeah. I feel like when you start to think about how you explain it, it's like reaching a new level. You are like, oh damn, yeah, of course, there's like a whole new world opening up.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
It's
like I
exciting
think it's
again. Yeah.
yeah, for sure, for sure. But I feel like that's like the journey that we all are going through, and some people are more stuck in this journey than others. But when I was younger, I always wanted bigger animals. Like, oh, Cayman would be so crazy, and and now it's like, yeah,
It's
it's
a
like
process. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think
yeah,
it's a
for
process.
sure.
And, but I think at the same time, as you said, like, why YouTube when you are doing so other things? I think it's important to, like, if you think, I was thinking about myself when I was 14, what would I like to be able to see on YouTube, or what would have helped me a lot to see on YouTube, and I was like, oh, if I would have seen myself now how I keep reptiles when I was 14, maybe I would have started in another division, like I would have started much earlier and I would have understood more things, do less mistakes, and enjoy the hobby in a different way, at the same time.
Yeah,
It's cool,
that's
man.
true. And also, it's like, especially when young people are coming in, you always have to remember that you also started somewhere because, like, now
Yeah.
they're getting like in an era where like the internet is like you can ask on Facebook, Instagram, and get like hate for so much shit. When I think about how I kept some animals in the past and would have posted that, man, maybe I wouldn't even be keeping animals anymore because I was like too scared or something like this. I think it's like also a pretty rough time for younger people or people in general to start with the hobby without like getting hate or because you always can improve, right? What we are doing is maybe like in 10 years, like super old, and when we still keep doing it, then it's also not a process. But that's something I also need to remind myself when I see people posting stuff. So, oh, maybe they're just new, they don't know better. Uh,
Mm.
yeah.
I keep quite away from Facebook because, as you said, like, it's a lot of this and a lot of hate also. But at the same time, you entered into that cycle when you see a cage, it's like, come on, man, you
Yeah.
could do better. But yeah, at the same time, you have to be empathetic with them and say, like, yeah, maybe I was in that point and just that I didn't realize. And during the
Yeah.
last 20 years, the social media growth has been exponential, and now on Facebook there's so much about everything. And before, I remember we had like one or two forums, which was everything very square. You could only post this and that and that, and then if you post something and it was wrong, you had like administrators and
Hmm.
moderators that would tell you this. And I like it, that era, but it was a bit more limited regarding resources, because there was many things that you could look for it and you would never find. And then with YouTube, Facebook, and everything, now you type literally anything or almost any species that you will probably see a little bit of information or someone's experience. So
Yeah,
in,
that's
in
true.
certain ways it's good, but it also normalize a lot the keeping animals, and or maybe we just start to see more what people been keeping before,
Mhm.
the shitty way that they've been keeping animals before, and it's more out there right now. I don't know. We could
Yeah.
do
Yeah, that's
a
true.
whole podcast about this, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
but
could do
like,
that now.
that's true. But I feel also like a few years back when we had like the forums and stuff like that, I have the feeling like you did much more deep dive into a species that you would do now. Like for example, there was like a German. forum that called Varanwelt, and it was all about varanids. And I can remember, for example, Merton, the Varanus mertensi, there was like one guy who built like his complete basement for mertensi. Man, it was crazy. I've been there like every day, reading all the time the same article and really diving into a species, right? And always like waiting and asking questions. And now you go on YouTube and like bam, bam, next, 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 next information. It's like sometimes overwhelming and you can't really focus to really, and also like to what I want to keep. There's like so much variety that you see all the time, and like, oh damn, that frog is cool. Oh no, this lizard is amazing. And maybe a few years back, you saw like 2, 3 pictures and was like, oh, that's something cool. And now you have like this gigantic mess of pictures that you can't really process sometimes.
Library of animals.
Yeah.
The mertensi is also a great species, by the way. If you think of mertensi, you don't necessarily think of the animal. A bit, of course, but definitely about the setup you can do for them and how they
Yeah.
can behave in there.
The water one.
Yeah.
Do you know the setup, Stefan? Sorry. Do you know the Varanwelt
I know
forum?
which one you mean. Yeah. Celodino with them, and he was diving. And I was talking to somebody else about this setup not too long ago, and they all thought it was the Australian guy who keeps his.
No, it's a
Dog
German guy,
Merton.
no?
But it's the
Yeah,
German guy. His
I know
setup
which
yeah.
one. I even know
So
which
good.
one you refer.
Yeah.
When you said
Damn, it
about
was
the basement, I know it has like the trees inside the water and
yeah.
one is
It's
yeah.
amazing.
I remember
Yeah,
this
it's
video. It was crazy.
yeah, this was crazy. I was like, what the fuck? You can do
Yeah.
that? That's crazy. And we have like at my parents' place, we have like 2 basements. Like one is for wine storage, but they don't use it for wine storage, and another one is like with gas tanks, right? And it's already like it would be the perfect enclosure because it's like with cement, like all framed up, and also the the wine area. Oh, I always dreamed of like keeping Varano Salvadori in there, something like that. I was talking to my dad, so oh, dad, maybe we can do something there. Yeah,
That's cool, man.
but it
I do.
never happened.
So maybe in the future, if no.
Maybe.
But I do think it's really interesting, like you say, that sometimes it's the setup that inspires us to get a certain animal, and for that, it's important that people think of that part too, like what involves actually setting up these animals, and that way it can also reverse your thought. Because for me, there are some species that the species itself will be amazing to me, but because I know the enclosure, how it would look like and what it involves, whether it's crocodilians, Varana salvadori. I was also at the venomous snake symposium, and there was also one later, and he talked about Ophiophagus hanna. Some localities traveled like 99 to 100 kilometers in a year. I was like, and then it's also done for you to keep those animals. So you said I would like to see a little bit more of herpetoculture itself and herpetology go hand in hand, of take elements from each other. What are like the important elements to you that somebody who's more on the care side, like the herpetoculture, just keeping these animals, what elements are for you most important? Understanding their habitat was very obvious. Are there any other elements that you like try to promote on your channel?
You mean things that people from herpetoculture would benefit from learning?
Yeah, thank you. That's great sum
No
up.
worry, I just didn't hear it good. Yeah, like habitat selection or niche habitat selection, niche habitats. Behavior also of the animal is super important, like understanding the morphology of the animal and how that morphology interacts with its habitat. Why does an animal has a prehensile tail, like just think about these things that might also where well, it's also a habitat. Depending the behavior, they will use certain parts of a tree, for example. So you might be able to give something different in the terrarium, but also temperature and heat and UV. Like in the trips that I did, I was lucky that my friend that always comes with me, Ruben, he owns a UV meter and one of these temperature. It's not a gun, but it's like that one that you almost gives you instant temperature. And every time we find like Trimeresurus, we take temperatures reading and stuff like that, and it just gave me like a different idea of certain things, For example, I used to give, we still give in Spain, Trimeresurus insularis. And one thing I used to see that a lot of people had was that they had like white spots on the skin sometimes. They had like some skin problems and stuff like that. And then I also get Trimeresurus venustus, and I saw that they struggle sometimes with sheds and stuff like that. And it was just a matter of analyzing the habitat. Like insularis, it says the name itself, insular island. And if you've been in an island, even if it's tropical or not, you see that there's a lot of wind current, like a lot of air movement. It can be humid. In Komodo, I'm sure it's humid at certain parts of the year, but at other parts is super dry. I've seen pictures. I haven't been personally in Komodo, but I had many friends. I spoke with them and said like, oh, it's 35 degrees, so dry, and you see the photos and it's crazy. So it meant like maybe that animal doesn't need to be so humid in the terrarium. Maybe it needs like a moment that it's humid and then it ventilates and then it can stay dry for the rest of the day. But for other animals like Venustus, where you find them more in like near the rocks, on streams, on the bottom of the jungle, so it might hold a better resistance to higher temperatures. So all these kind of things that you might not even consider, it affects depending certain species. There's other species that are super tough, like I have tokay geckos, when they can live to the most humid, to the most dry and hot and cold and many other places, But temperature, UV, how animals bask, depending the time of the day, finding also, for me, for example, is important when I look for vipers, always looking for east and south side of the mountain, the slopes, in order, because you understand that they have the sun there and different hours, you find different inclinations, how they bask. I don't know, there's a lot of these kind of things that they matter a lot.
I would, especially that last part, I would never have thought of that.
But it's super important.
I have to be honest that I've done some traveling, but it's all been in Europe.
But in Europe, it's what I use the most. Like in the Netherlands, when I was looking for others, you always look for the kind of the gorse, we call this kind of bush and heathland and everything. Then you look where the sun hits.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
So and the sun hits only in east and south, and at the afternoon when it's less hot or less sunny, all obviously on west. But like that, you can arrive to a habitat and not lose time looking anywhere. You just select certain areas where you might have more luck,
Yeah. Nice, man.
But there's a lot of things. I've been thinking a lot about this stuff.
Is there any project for you that you would really like to do based on what you've learned and what you're now like digging into?
I have like certain dream. I wouldn't say terrariums, but like more like we call it installation facilities. I think that after certain size or logistic in a cage, it stops being a terrarium. It's more like a kind of, I don't know, zoo enclosure,
Yeah.
But for example, one behind you, I think you have some mangrove growing there.
Yeah.
I have in my brain, one of my dream terrariums would be to do like a mangrove ecosystem for Trimeresurus purpuromaculatus. And I saw a guy on YouTube that has a video of, I think it's like a hexagonal terrarium, and it has low tide and high tide during the day, and it's like a mangrove habitat. And when it goes low, he has crabs and the fish that, what's the fish that goes out on
the mud skippers.
Mud skipper, yeah.
Yeah,
and he has that. And I was like, oh, imagine having a purpura maculatus with like a bit of land, obviously, but having this up and down and the crabs and all this and keeping like that would be one of my dream cages. Laticauda, colubrina also in a marine aquarium. But obviously, that would be something I would do if I work in a zoo that has the space, or if I would have at some point my own exhibition of reptiles. Like you can build a massive sea salt aquarium and then have land and have the animal going in and out and this. Or another one I'd love to do also, it would be maybe the animal is not spectacular. Elafe Tainura or Orthropis. I don't know if it's Orthropis now.
Yeah.
Tainurus. I don't know if it's a subspecies Ridley or whatever, but I've seen some in Thailand and Taiwan, I think, and some other countries that they live quite into the caves, making a terrarium which is like a cave formation, but then on the side you have like just outside the cage and you have a little bit of plants and light and UV, but most of the terrarium is like dark, and seeing a little bit the behavior of the animal, how it interacts. I don't know, these kind of things will be like what makes me wet, rather than to keep a mansion, like I love to keep a mansion pit viper, but I think I would be more excited about doing those kind of projects in the long run,
Man, that's crazy with the cave enclosure, because like I said the same thing to Till, and it's almost like exact like you said it. It's like that's also a dream of mine to build like imagine like a cave, and maybe on one side of the enclosure you can't see anything. You have to open up a small little thing to watch into the cave. Imagine
those kind of things. It always
whip spiders added.
Yeah.
The small like beacon of light coming in.
Some bats in there.
If you can put bats, man, that would be a big cave. But I also thought about this, the cave thing, for example, on Gila monsters, because when I work in zoo, many times you have to think about the species you have and its behavior and how it's going to be for the public, for them to enjoy. And you have animals that they are quite boring, or they can look boring if you don't make the right enclosure. So in the zoo, I see many times Gila monster and they are in the corner or hiding, or they don't really look moving. But I thought, well, if you would do a cave like underground, that they have an access, and then you would put like a kind of glass that they don't see through, but you can see them inside with a tiny LED light, because it wouldn't bother. Like at the end of the day, at night, they still need a bit of light from stars or from the moon to navigate. They don't have 100% night vision, but so like this, maybe you give to the public also a better experience on how actually these animals live. Or you could have like some goggles that you look through the glass, I don't know. All these kind of things working in zoos help me a little bit of thinking about these crazy exhibits that you can do to display the behavior of the animal in the wild, because at the end of the day, when you find an animal in the wild, that's a very tiny proportion of how that animal spends their lives. Like if you see, I don't know how you say, if you find a snake crossing in the middle of the jungle, it's going from one point to another. It doesn't mean that they live in that habitat. Like you find snakes crossing the road and you don't think to do a road terrarium, like so it's a little bit like that. Like we need to analyze a little bit more how that animal spends his ecology, like how it spends most of the time, like, and then do the terrariums in order for them to be able to display all these behaviors.
You hit you write the right string for Flo. He loves this.
I think that's like the best part about, for me at least, the coolest part about keeping the animals is like seeing they interact with the enclosure, right? I mean, it's one thing when you have like a crazy expensive animal, but let's say shitty setup, and it's only sitting on a branch and do nothing. Rather than having like a super beautiful display where it really interacts, like with the mangrove tank, for example, or there's like so many options, and I think people need a little think more like more crazy. You know what I mean? You can do stuff. I mean, it doesn't have to be like big, but maybe do a smaller version, dream big and do it a bit smaller.
I think there's more people than you think, because the idea also with the Purpureo maculatus, I got at least 2 different people talking about that concept.
yeah.
And I showed them the mangroves.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I don't know if you have that, but with the channel, and if people see something they can relate to, they connect with you, which I think is one of the best parts of doing it. It's for a while, that's been the only reason I kept doing it, because that was so valuable to me and still is. But they send you ideas, and so there are definitely people who are doing this. I think it just takes a while for them indeed to know how to approach it and looking for info. But
but
that's true.
I think that's a good, valuable reason to have your channel, for example. And I think I got ideas from your channel also when you show. I don't know, it was you were keeping of office back then, and you did some cage that I like it a lot. I had like a tree and a palm leaf that was dry over it, and you were talking about how these animals, they live much more under. But then you were also talking about the struggle of, because that's another thing that we have to talk about, is like the struggle of cleaning these cages or having access to a certain point. And well, there you can start to speak about, introducing a little bit of bioactivity and stuff like that. Yeah. But in case that you were talking, I think it was more for venomous snakes, because you have to be able to handle them and access and take them in and out and stuff. But yeah, I remember like seeing these things, and it helps people to try. I got one thing in Instagram that worked a lot for me was I did few cages in my workplace now, which I did cement and stuff like that, and I did a big project lately. This year, a massive cage that it was before just a bare cage that they built with walls, and they had like painted the background, and I did like a big rock formation, a big tree and stuff like that. And I got so many, probably that's what launched my Instagram a little bit more, because I passed from 3,000 followers to 20,000 in like 3 days, and it was mostly because people were following that project, and it was like, oh, let's see what he's doing with this. But I got so many people talking to me saying, oh, I want to do a background for my animal. I realized that, oh, you can do so many things. And then they say, how do I do the cement? And it's like, man, if you have a terrarium, don't do cement, because it will weigh like a ton, but we can explore different options. And putting it out there, which what you were saying, that a lot of people also have this crazy idea of this, but not a lot of people speaks about them or shows them, that's what I think is important, that there's people that is really good and have a lot of knowledge, but if knowledge is not shared, sometimes it can be useless at the same time. You can know a lot, but if you're alone in an island, no one cares, and it doesn't work for anything rather than for yourself. So I think sometimes it's not pleasant, or it's not comfortable, and especially with secrets sometimes that people think that they have about how to make a cage and how to make the mix of cement, people don't want to. I ask many people, say, oh, sorry, I cannot tell you because it's my job to do cages, or it's my this, and I don't want to spill my secrets. I can find it on Google if I spend really time, I can be the detective and find it. I understand in a certain way, but I think that we have to share a little bit more information, because I'm not going to do a business to outtake you, outcompete you, But it helped a lot putting it out there, how to do these kind of things to many people. I will tell you at least 50 people after putting that video wrote to me and said like, oh, I want to do this for my cage. I realized that I could do this for my carpet python, or I want to do this crazy project. And some of them, maybe they don't have the same ability or doesn't look as good as they thought or they want, or in my opinion, but at least it means that they tried something new, and they got out of the norm. And a lot of people also wrote me asking about UVB. I did a video about how UV doesn't go through glass, or how it impacts the girth of the mesh and stuff like that. And they are things that all this has been spoken before. I'm not telling anything new. It's just the way that you put it out there. It's important. And nowadays, with the new generations and the very short attention span, it's more important. Like a lot of people tell me, like, it's true, my videos sometimes on Instagram, they are very fast-paced. Other than, I rather have a fast-paced video and reach 100,000 people, and if from those 100,000 people there's like 20 that they want to see a very slow paced video, they can go on my YouTube and they can learn really deep. But at least it reach a wide audience and it can reach to those people. If I do a very slow pace and very niche video, if the 200 people watch it and 199 don't care, and only one, still one person that you gain or you teach something, but we are trying to reach more people, so I think it's important the way that you explain it and you put it out there.
Yeah, for sure. Like this week, I just posted my first reel with a voiceover.
Mhm.
And like my background building skills are okay, but like there are people that are doing crazy stuff, right? And I always thought like, I need to be better to show what I'm doing, but then I thought about it and was like, damn, I think I'd never be like 100% satisfied, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, it's true. It's
And
exactly that.
yeah, and I learned like that I don't have like 10 enclosures where I can build a back wall. I just have like at the moment I'm doing this one, and you need to learn your skills, right? And of course, when you have like built 20 backgrounds, of course, it's gonna look much better than only like with three. But at least you did it and started your process. And a lot of people also reached out because like uh they always were asking, "Oh, can you show us this and that? Can you show me this and that?" I was like, "Yeah, okay, maybe let's do a video." But it takes a lot of time
Hmm.
to. Yeah,
Well,
I was like
Stefan will
almost.
know.
Yeah. It was like a week. Yeah, okay, it's like building the whole thing, but man, then you want the right anchors, make it a little bit cool, and then it's like have to think about stuff, and yeah,
That's why I don't do like join me on a day of care, because it
yeah.
adds so much work to already pretty much a full day
Mm,
of work. So maybe you can do that once or twice, but after that, also feeding videos.
Yeah,
Man,
it takes a. That's the thing for me. The most difficult of when I did a video about building cage is filming it, because once I get into like the build process, I can do it pum pum pum, and I can spend 8 hours doing it. But
mm,
if every time I put something new, I have to change the camera, do an angle, and make it nice, because you can plan the camera and make a whole 8 hours and then speed it up and cut it, but oh, it's not gonna look as good. So yeah, it takes a lot,
yeah.
and not only that, and the editing after like small channels we edit ourselves. That's another thing that is cool about YouTube. You learn a lot of new skills. In my case, I learned editing to a basic level, that I can edit quite okay, but yeah, it takes a lot of time and a lot of. That's why my YouTube now is not as active as it used before, because I work 40 hours a week and I have my masters and I have other things, and making a YouTube video takes a long time to plan it, to execute it, and then to edit it. Mm. And then if it flops, it's like
all that work.
it's like
Yeah.
to be honest, on my YouTube, I'm not mad about many of the videos. I do them not for myself, but for my own satisfaction of, oh, I did this. Like it
Yeah.
looks good. I don't care if the algorithm it has 1,500 views. My herping videos are the worst performing videos, and they are my favorite,
Mm.
because I come after 4 years and I check them and I say, oh man, I did this. Oh man, I didn't remember about this.
Yeah.
This. So the YouTube for me is kind of a way of a legacy also at the same time, of things that I've been doing. And but
Online
yeah,
diary.
but what you were saying, Florian, it's very true. For me, I always struggle a lot with criticism. I take it very bad, and that was one of the main things I didn't wanna be out there, and say like, oh, if I
Mm.
do this and people say, oh, it's not good enough, or mine is better, or you didn't do this and that. And I had to force myself to do this, and it's fine. Like making mistakes is normal. The only thing at that point when I did it is like, well, this is the best version of myself I ever been, like obviously in
Mm.
2 years I'll know more, but as right now, that's the best I learn, or the best I can offer. So I'll just put it out there, and a lot of people correct me, or oh, this is not like that, or this. And as long as you're respectful and you show also like a kind of respectful demeanor, how you explain things, that you don't believe that you are the best and you are the only way, the only correct way to do things and stuff like that. In general, they treat me 95% of the time interactions I had, they've been positive. And obviously, there's always bad ones, and they ruin your day, maybe, or maybe that you don't care, depending how you are. Like for me, it affects me sometimes more than it should be. But with the time, you just I read messages now and says I just delete it or I close it. Before I was like, nah. And I answer, and I spend like an afternoon arguing with someone that doesn't really care about me or has nothing to do with my life.
Yeah.
It's part
To
of
battle.
But yeah, I encourage you to keep doing videos and whatever it is. Like people really, I used to look videos and I see tutorials about how to build a terrarium, and then they skip parts about you just put the cement and say, oh yeah, but what cement? What percentage of cement you have to put and stuff like that. So, people will interact with you for small details, and it's a nice way to interact and meet new people.
Yeah, for me, it's always like the same with the podcast. So I was not that comfortable speaking English, but now, now I'm a little bit more forced, and now I also feel like, yeah, okay, but I want to get better. Of course, I need to speak. Yeah, it's like, and now I have like the mindset, oh, okay, I don't know a word.
You can explain it in another way. Yeah. That's what I do. I just try to go around what I want to say, and someone will help you. Or you just explain and move hands and stuff like that.
Yeah, and in 2 years it's much better, and that way it's
perfect, your English, man. Like I understand. The thing is, like sometimes when you speak with people who are not native English speakers, when you speak between each other, it's much easier to understand each other than when you speak with a local. In the UK here, I have so much problem with all the accents that they have inside the English, that when I speak with someone from India or someone from France or Germany, it's like, oh, it's so easy to understand his English because they go like perfectly how they should say the word.
and also that they have the same struggle with like, I'm not that good at speaking. Therefore, it's like makes it much more easier. Yeah, for real.
That's one thing I like a lot about your channel, Stefan, that you chose to do it in another language that is not Dutch, that it's not your main language. Like when I started, I thought about, many people told me, oh, you should do it in English. The only reason I didn't do it in English at the beginning was because I had insecurities about my own accent. But at the same time, I thought that the English market or the English side of terrarium and stuff like that was much wider than the Spanish. And not only because my videos would perform worst because there's much more competition, but also because there's less people doing it and it would matter more, the videos. But yeah, like props to you for going into the English market, speaking market, because it's massive.
Yeah, thank you. I did start in Dutch because I felt more comfortable that way too. But just like all of you, I'm constantly trying to improve. But sometimes if I look back, I'm like, oh, I don't want that to be there anymore. Like there's a better version, so I deleted a lot of that stuff. But the Spanish, I think the Spanish market, let's call it like that, could be pretty big because next to English, Spanish is one of the most, the Spanish, they did their job, So there's plenty of Spanish speakers all over the world.
Dutch people cannot speak also.
No, we did the same.
You just lost it later. The thing is like, it never clicked me about Central and South America. When I started, I said, Spain, 40 something millions. That's the market. It's small. But then I just look at the other side of the map and said, there's a lot of people who speak. And even if because the herpetoculture hobby is not as notorious there, might not feel like they keep animals, but even if they wouldn't keep animals, they're still interested to learn about reptiles itself. Because one thing I do is like, my channel is not pure herpetoculture. I also do herping and other stuff. I try to do, but at the same time, I have a lot of people from many countries of South America, which I didn't think they would ever watch a video of mine, and they text me and they say, "Oh man, greetings from El Salvador, or Honduras and stuff like that." And it's like, damn, people are interested in these things from It's like, yeah, and especially in Mexico is a massive, massive
Mm.
market. Like, I have a couple of friends that they are from Mexico, um, and yeah, it's crazy. I didn't know there was such a. I guess that they have a lot of influence from the US also.
Mm.
They love big monitors and reticulated pythons and stuff like that. So my friend told me like, oh yeah, I really like these kind of channels that you guys starting now to do in Spain, that they teach people more like the importance of how to keep animals correctly, because here in Mexico they have quite a lot of. It's not the US has amazing keepers, it's just like the loudest ones or the more known famous ones. Usually they tend to have a certain way to keep animals that is not compatible with private keeping. Like
Mm.
that's a few years ago there was a group in Spain. It was called Heconia. It was based on keeping geckos, but it had this very good idea, which I joined them and I helped a few times when we did like roundtables and kind of not a podcast, but like it was interviews and stuff.
Mm.
They did interview to many keepers, and it was to bring this kind of thinking that you guys were talking about, how to keep better the animals, and that was a really interesting project. And for some reason they just left it, but we were talking about. There was always the typical rag versus terrarium. Is it
Mm.
better one? I said like it's not about better or worse. It's about normalizing certain standards. Like my problem was I was telling them like I don't care if you keep it in a plastic box. Like it's your problem. I find it that it's much more difficult to having to open the top, and if you want to keep it with UV and having all the light on the top, whatever. It's just normalizing this substandard uh, care, like,
Mm.
oh, breeders have like that. I said, well, you have 5 animals. You are not a breeder. I'm sorry, like, you are not a breeder. You don't need to cut corners or expenses. And if you need to cut it, you should reduce your collection, and I don't know. This kind of stuff, I think it's important in the Spanish market. And I think also Mexico, Central and South America needs to. Yeah, I think it will be like like a snowball that gets bigger and it goes there, and people will start to enjoy. They will have access also to brands like Arcadia. Now I know that they are in Mexico because this guy, I think he helps to bring a lot of brands, and he sells them also all the material and stuff like that. So the more that they have access to new products that we have in Europe, for example, or in the US, I think it will get better and better everything for their keeping and their standards.
Yeah, for sure. That's also a point we can't forget because, like, in Europe, we have access to a lot of
Mhm.
almost everything. And in different countries, it's completely different. Of course, they can't have like the quote standards that some of us has.
Yeah,
And it's also like a big thing.
Yeah. But it's really cool that you try. It's also, I think, a mindset thing. Next to the fact that you got to have access to the materials and to the animals, but simply the mindset and the way you approach it already can do so much when either choosing an animal or setting up their enclosure or the frequency of the quality of care.
yeah, yeah,
It's,
yeah.
Yeah,
yeah. So
for sure.
I think this is a nice segue. There are many topics I would have pointed out too. That's also for us something like what do you let be where it needs to be, and what would you like to expand on? But otherwise, this is gonna be a coffee date of 10 hours. So I think that's a nice segue into um, bit of the reason of this podcast, and that is it's called European Herpetoculture because when we were talking about our hobbies, it was European Herpetoculture was spoken about as a separate thing. And you've been in Cyprus, you're raised in Spain, you're now in the UK, you've been traveling with the GIF, what
Yeah.
it was called here in Dutch. So with the venomous snake exhibition. How would you describe European herpetoculture, if there is any?
That's a difficult one to describe.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know, the way that we always see it in Spain is like Germany and the Netherlands, they were like on the top of herpetoculture. For us, it was, yeah, you can be very proud. For us, it was like, oh man, we have to reach that level, and not only how you keep animals and stuff, but also at that time, I think it's called the GHT, the association you have, things like that we don't have in Spain now. In recent events with the laws that they pass in Spain about not allowing to keep certain species on some positive lists and stuff like that, there's been like in the reptile community more like a union and trying to become that. And I was like, dude, 10 years ago we were speaking about this, like they will catch us, at some point they will catch us with naked, basically, because we are not working enough in community. Everyone is more interested in what I do, how much money I do, rather than if you tell someone, oh, why don't you donate part of your breeding money to build something? I said, are you crazy? You're crazy. But it's just a mentality. But the way that I see European herpetoculture compare, for example, to the US, which would be the two biggest markets. I know the Asian market now is like super strong and they are like growing a lot. I don't know enough to comment about that, but I would say like the Europeans, we are like the hobbyist in the most nerdish way. Like they really have the collections that they are like most specific and niche and all these. I don't know. I just have this. When I luckily got into the hobby quite early age. I was 13, 14, and I had experience going to ham when I was 16 the first time and meeting a lot of people that they were much older than me. And I always have this vision of this old German guy being 60 or 70. When I went first time, I don't know if it was Houten or a frog day when I was living in Leiden. I went to a frog day. 70-year-old man with so many dendrobates, and saying, oh yeah, you should come to my house, I'll show you everything and stuff like that with my boss from the shop that time. And he showed us pictures and he had this amazing tiny room, it was tiny, but it was packed with vivariums and stuff, and he had everything to the last millimeter perfect, had like all his system, spray system, all his water system to come out so it doesn't get too wet, all the breeding food, everything, and it was like, damn, I want to be like that when I'm 70, But I have this idea of like how I see the European hobby. I see like people who really break their brains about how to keep things, Maybe the US hobby, I find it more the things that at least I've seen more like big, like capitalism, like make it big, make it the most money, the biggest thing, the most flashy thing. And they do well because they have so many cool species there that we might not have, or not to a certain extent. And also the fact that they have much more space in general due to the architecture that they have and stuff like that allows them to keep other species that here are not as common or as easy. But I see like we are the nerdish, more specific thing, like people who just keep anoles, and I see a lot of I don't know his name, Arman, I think, or Herp Time, and he says like, oh yeah, I got these anoles from Dutch guy or a German guy or a Czech guy, that he kept them since the 70s or 80s. Maybe he went himself and collect them because that time, let's be real, there was not the same laws or standards. So people were like, oh, I'm going to St. Lucia and pick up this and all that. It's crazy, But yeah, I think like European herpetoculture is like when it all started, like the base root and plant, and from there it extended and different places, especially in your area in the Central Europe and Netherlands and Germany. And maybe I always think like maybe it's more, I've seen it since I'm in the UK, it's more common because the weather and the society you have, that is more like staying inside house, being cozy and nice in the house, and then you develop more hobbies that they have to be developed inside your own home. In Spain is more like, oh, it's good weather, let's go out, let's do this, let's do that, let's go to the bar, to the terrace to have some beers or this. So maybe these kind of hobbies, they not been developed at the time the same way, but I don't know. I see herpetoculture in Europe as the where everything started a little bit. Even maybe I'm super wrong, but the way that I've seen it growing up in Spain and traveling in Ham and Houten from very early ages, I probably been 20 times in Ham, and I always have this vision of this old man showing me his home and his stuff, and it's like, man, that's amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's some good points. Yeah, for sure.
I think it's interesting, like you guys being, I guess, Florian, you're German, no? You said.
Yeah.
Yeah, you being from Germany, Stefan from the Netherlands, and me from Spain. Like they are very different points in Europe, and we, like as I said, like we idolize Dutch and German herpetoculture since we are young, you know, because have you seen they have terroristic web page and stuff like that, and it was crazy. Seeing the forums, there was Venom Land also. I think it was a forum I used to watch a lot, and I imagine that it's Dutch or German, you know, and
yeah, Switzerland also connected to Germany, of course. I think it's also interesting for the listener to go more specifically to Spanish, just short on Spanish herpetoculture, you know, some of the laws. But something I just wanted to say, because that really bugged me, is you talked about the Armin from Herp Time, that he indeed gets all these animals from Europe. And I remember he got the Anolis vermiculatus, the hydrophobic anoles.
Yeah.
And in Europe, those were like pretty cheap, you know? And the guy who was offering them, there was not a lot of people who wanted them. So as far as I know the story, a lot of those animals ended up there. Armin did an Instagram short with dipping it underwater, and the whole terraristique was full with people looking for this and all. But like, dude, what a shame.
It happened like when I saw Herp Time a few years ago. I was like, oh man, it's crazy that people didn't realize how cool anoles are until now. That they've been put it in the face in a cool way, you know? And I saw it, and in Spain now they are like, anoles are like super wanted. It's the first time ever I've seen somebody like wanting anoles, you know? And that's trends and stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah. But there you can see the power of like Instagram and social media. Same with like rain frogs at the moment. I don't know the scientific name of them, but like the small jelly frogs that a lot of like non-reptile people now keep because they are cute and they're a meme.
But
that's crazy.
That's a bit of annoying part, because
for sure.
If it's inside the hobby of people who are really interested about them, I understand. But I one thing that for me was surprising was the difference between the UK and main European hobby also, especially since Brexit, how the difference in prices. Maybe also is because I'm not that connected to maybe European prices anymore, because now with the Brexit it's really difficult to bring stuff. So I know more about UK in the last 5 years and how the prices are, and with the introduction of CITES, certain species went up in price, you know. But for me, it was like I breed Chihuahua geckos here at home, and I breed a lot of them. And here you can barely sell them; like no one wants them, you know. Like sometimes you put them at 100 pounds, and you still don't sell them. And my friend was saying like, "Oh, I just bought this baby in Spain on sex, 340 pounds, you know, euros." I was like, "What?" So it's like, yeah, Chihuahuas, they are super rare in Spain lately, like. And you can sell your pair for like 800 euros, you know, stuff like that. I said, dude, I just sold mine for 400. You know, it's like, what the hell? And it's just like how different. But then you have species here that they are super expensive and hard to find. And in Europe, you can get them for like 100 euros, you know, stuff like that. Just depending where you are, sometimes it varies a lot.
Valentin, recently I went to Swiss, and Valentin said the same to us, because in Switzerland, especially the CITES animals, it's pretty hard to get new CITES animals in, at least. So a lot of those like Abronia, Shinisaurus, whatever, the prices there were really different.
I have what is it? Legodactylus williamsi, and I breed them, and I have them all with perfect paperwork. It's quite easy here to get. Like once you start to breed, you just apply for the papers, you pay a small fee, and you get them sent in a couple of weeks. But so many people ask me from Spain and France, like, "Oh, can you send someone?" It's not impossible. It's really difficult. But yeah, I was like, "Oh man!" I didn't realize like in Spain, no one has Legodactylus williamsi breeding constantly. I had like this year like 15, 20 babies easily, and they keep producing, and people struggle to find one or two. And if they find them, maybe they are from back like from production of time when they didn't have CITES, when they didn't get the proper papers. So now they struggle to legalize them or move them legal, because being CITES one, it's much more not like a slap in the wrist. It can be like a big hefty fine if you move CITES one. So yeah, it's just interesting sometimes to see the difference of market inside the hobby, like how it fluctuates also with, depending CITES or Instagram trends, or even just interest in general in the hobby. Like people now in the UK are mad about Ceratrophes cornuta amphibians, Suriname horned frogs.
Sorry to disclose you, but the connection stopped there for a bit, so I missed a bit, I think, from the.
Okay.
So you were talking about the species in the UK that people were mad about?
Ceratrophes, cornuta.
Yeah.
Suriname horned frog, and just now recently, a lot of people are looking for them, and it's just trends that change inside the markets and the hobby. But yeah, I find it super interesting when I move here to compare it to Spain and other places like Ham.
No, that's true.
So how about Spain itself then? Because I know there are some laws. You're not allowed to keep a whole lot of animals. A while back there was a lot of movement, rumor, chaos around the Python regius, I believe. So could you give us a bit of a description on the Spanish hobby?
Yeah. So in the last few years, the hobby has been hit hard with different laws and mostly because the change of government we had, which I'm not going to get into that, but it was much more progressive and animal friendly kind of. So the Python regius problem was, I don't know if it was 3 or 4 years ago. And it all became because they found not a wild one, that's an escaped pet in like, I don't remember, it was a garden or just like somewhere, and they start to push that narrative of like, oh, they include it in the possible invasive species, like Python regius would be able to adapt to our country. And they use the example of Lampropeltis in the Canary Islands, which fair enough, because we already had the problem, but it's very difficult that would happen, like regius breeding in the wild in Spain. It gets really cold in most of Spain. Like even if it's not in south of Spain that cold, still gets nearly 0 degrees in most places. So yeah, that thing got passed and it got pushed. We have one thing, it's called BOE, BOE, and they propose things, and then you have certain time to counteract them, and then if they pass to the Supreme Court or stuff like that, they get passed as law. And it caught us like without expecting anything, and because we didn't have a strong association, we have the strongest one is called SOEBA, like Society of Herpetology from Valencia, which is just a tiny area of Spain, but they had many years, and they went to court, and they had to pay thousands, and people put money towards that because obviously people were interested. They had big business regarding breeding morphs of ball pythons, and they lost at the end because there was, I don't know, it was a bit stupid, to be honest, from the government, but at the same time from the hobby itself we were not prepared. And after that, now this year and past year, they got the law, which this one is not bad in a certain ambit, which would be the normal thing. It just says that you as a private keeper are not allowed to breed and make money selling animals, which I can understand from a tax point of view and everything, because you're not a business, but at the same time it kills the small hobbyist, like as a hobby itself. But also I believe that who got hit harder is not the private keeper, because at the end of the day you're at your house and you don't have cameras or control of anything. So if you want to do whatever you want, you can, as long as you don't get caught. I think it just incentivizes a lot of clandestinity in the hobby. But the ones that got hit harder is the people who were registered and had everything legal, which are shops and proper centers and breeders, because those are already in the system. So they're going to go first to them to check them. And shops, for example, now they are not allowed to have the animals for people to see, not even outside from the window, in the shop itself. So if you want to go to buy a reptile, you go to the shop, you speak with the person and say, yeah, we have so-and-so on the back. And they go back in the back, they take a picture, they show you. And if you're interested, you can buy it. But you cannot go and see the animal,
Wow.
You can only see the animal when you buy it. So it's just to avoid impulsive buys and stuff like that. But it happened with all the animals, not only reptiles. Just I'm speaking now because this is the topic. And then now, for example, where I come from in Barcelona, we already had this for many years, but there was a law about animals that they weighed more than 2 kilos. They were not allowed to be kept by private keepers unless that you have something called núcleo zoológico, like a license to keep reptiles, which basically means like you are either a shop, a breeder, or a small zoo collection. So you can keep big reticulated pythons technically, or even tortoise, which is stupid. I think that for tortoise they did an exception or something like that. But that was in Catalonia, and I'm not sure if it was Sevilla, Andalusia, or some another community. But now they pass it through all the country. So anyone who has a caiman, for example, they need to get rid of them. Literally, they said that it wouldn't happen, but now they started to do, like, they come to your house and they ask you. First, they gave you 6 months to I don't know, denounce. You have to go to say, oh, I'm keeping this, and then they fine you. It's like mad. Say, oh yeah, I'm selling drugs, by the way. It's like saying that. But yeah, because we have such a problem with how bureaucracy works in Spain, not only with reptiles, with many things. It's a nightmare, bureaucracy in Spain. That's one of the things that I don't miss from Spain, having to do paperwork and stuff like that. For some reason, the paperwork for reptiles and keeping, like, doing CITES and this, it's run by an entity called Miteco. And the supervision of all these laws and stuff, it's run by the government, which is separate. But when you call one, they tell you that you have to go to the other one. And when you call the other one, they said that's not their job, So they leave you always there in the middle and you don't know what to do. And then when you get caught, it's part of your fault because you didn't do enough, but it's part of their fault because there has been organization. And it's as crazy that the government went after Miteco, which is this entity, to the court because they were saying that they were not doing things legally. I don't know. They even have fights between them. So it's a bit of a mess right now. So I don't know. In the next few years, we'll see if it can be reverted, because obviously, I believe it was Norway. They had the same thing years ago, and they end up fighting this law, and now they were allowed to keep reptiles again, or exotic reptiles at least. So yeah, I hope Spain will have this in the future.
Man, that's a whole lot more than I thought.
No, it's quite bad. Same. It's quite bad. Still, there's a lot of ways to go around, but you cannot, for example, go to Ham now to buy animals and bring them to Spain and sell them. That's one thing. Like, you are allowed to sell animals in Spain that have been bred by people that have the permits. Like, you can have, like, a permit as a breeder, and you breed animals, and you can sell those ones, or a shop can buy those ones to sell them, but they cannot go on to Ham, buy a bunch of reptiles, bring them here and sell them. That's not allowed anymore.
Okay.
Crazy.
So a certain way it helps to counteract a lot of bad business and clandestine shit, but at the same time it affects to, in my opinion, close friends and people who I know they were doing things right.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, there was a period I believe Spain went really was on some people, and there was also some shady stuff happening
Oh yeah.
at some places.
But due to this bureaucracy problem, Spain was a hotspot for animal trafficking.
Mm.
Fortunately, because my career, I came across a lot of these people, like not my friends, but
Mm.
you see them in the shows and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
Mm.
I remember like years ago there was a talk about certain animals that they were legally exported from Spain around the world. And when you read the list, it's just crazy that that thing got given CITES in Spain. Like
Mm.
Galapagos marine iguanas. They came out from Spain and they went to another country legally.
So maybe that's then good because a lot of I think our listeners and people in this hobby go to Ham. Is it possible for me to buy from a Spanish?
Yeah. Of
Okay,
course.
there's no.
No, it's not a problem. That
Okay,
I still have friends that they go to Ham constantly, and they are allowed to go and buy animals and bring them for their own keeping, or if they plan to breed them in the future. It's just that it counteracts
resale.
it counteracts the buy and resell, because many times we had shows the weekend after Ham, and I went to Ham and to the show, and it was like they are in the same box. You just change the price a little bit. So it avoids a lot of this kind of less ethic business, I would say. Like at the end, it's not less ethic, but it's just if you buy an animal after you want to resell it because you are a business, okay. It's just that when you are not a business, you are a private keeper, and you just go to Ham, you fill up a van, and you don't pay any taxes, you don't pay anything, and you just bring it. You are allowed to put a table on a show in Spain, and literally, I swear you, I've seen the same plastic box that they were for selling. I saw it in Spain, and you can see how they change the price. These kind of things, yeah. But yeah, people from Ham, they can buy from Spanish keepers, no problem, and Spanish keepers can buy from breeders from all over the Europe.
No, go ahead.
Regarding venomous snake keeping, what you were saying about in Spain, it's not prohibited, it's regulated, which people kept making a mistake. And it's not that difficult actually to manage to keep venomous snakes. It's just really expensive, and you need to understand how it works, the law. So it says that you need to have your breeding permit or your center permit. So it means that you have to have a room that is adequate to keep animals first. And once it's deemed appropriate to keep reptiles in general, then you apply for a potential dangerous animal. It's not a permit, it's just an insurance. And then you can keep venomous snakes, Okay. So, and the law says that you don't really have even to have antivenom technically, but many places they require it, many community, because it goes at the end by councils, like each town they can ask you different things. Sometimes they say, no, you have to have antivenom, or some others they don't care or they don't understand. But yeah, you can have it. It's just that people's like, oh, I wish to keep a Kistrodon contortrix, And it's like, yeah, fair, but you will have to spend thousands in order to keep one snake. So you counteract the impulse keeping of venomous snakes. Like me and my friend keep venomous snakes in a collection in Spain, but we put a lot of money in order to have that, and we are like literally 5 collections probably in Spain that we do it legally, but it's not good. But in the last 5 to 8 years, I believe there's been a wipe out of illegal venomous keeping in Spain, because they caught many people who were like notorious venomous snake keepers from the shady side, people got bitten also, so it put them more in spotlight and stuff like that. So before there was a massive community of venomous snakes. I remember when I was working in zoos, a lot of people kept cobras and crazy shit at home, And the worst thing, like I worked in the zoo that time that had the antivenoms, and we only keep antivenom for the species that we keep. So there are people keeping Naya Naya at home, and we don't have antivenom for Naya Naya. So if you get bitten, you are effed up, And sadly, in 2020, I lost a friend by a Manxian pit viper. Which is the first ever recorded, I think, death. Manu, and I know him because we were friends from a WhatsApp group, and then we met a few times in Ham and when I was down south visiting friends and stuff like that. He wasn't a nice guy, but he was keeping not a lot, but quite a few venomous snakes illegally at home, and he was not keeping them bad. It's just that he didn't have the permit and he didn't have the connections to people who knew what to do in case that something happened, and the fact that he lived in Algeciras, which is like one of the furthest towns. It's like the border with Morocco. Like you had Gibraltar and Morocco in front. All led to this bad night. I just remember, like when I got the call, I said, like I knew what was going to happen, because even though it was a mansion, it was like a nearly 2-meter mansion. And we gave from our collection was only an hour and a half away from his location. And we gave to the hospital the only antivenoms we had, which is Trimeresurus, because it's what we keep. And technically, it's not the antivenom that you have to use. You should use the China polyvalent one for Protobothrops and Naiatra that they have, And and then antivenom, the good one, and the more doses, it arrived from Madrid, which is the zoo where we keep them, but it arrived late because so far, and the hospital had protocols. You couldn't literally drive down with your own car to take the antivenom. They had to send somebody to pick it up and bring down. And that's like a 12-hour round trip. And he just passed away as soon as the antivenom arrived. So I think that thing wake up a lot of people about that it's not a joke. We didn't have a death in Spain about venomous snakes that I'm aware in the last 15 years or 20 years of exotic species. So that thing, I think, a lot of people started to rethink about keeping these animals illegally.
It's heavy, man. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. It's a pity because he was 21, like he was a child, basically. Or he was 23. I don't remember this time. The last 4 years after COVID is just passing a different timeline, looks like. But yeah.
Yeah, that's way too young to go. But I think also great that you share this so people realize the impact. And I know there's definitely some venomous snake keepers in countries where they're not directly allowed, and if they get bit, they are more hesitant to seek help. And then when they do, it's already taken a lot of damage. And it's heavy.
That's why I often think like, especially with social media, like people handling venomous snakes like it's nothing. It's like, man, that's just crazy. That's like they have millions of followers and they go around and do like it's like a corn snake or something. Like
I always, at some point in my life, I had like different views about free handling and holding venomous snakes in a certain way or another. And even in the safe way, I also think that certain people shouldn't handle snakes. But at this point in my life, I'm a bit like, well, I don't really care, each at their own. But I think that people who has a big social media influence need to realize it's not like, it's stupid at the same time, because I grew up watching Steve Irwin and he was free handling everything, and I didn't have the need of free handle anything. But at that time, Steve Irwin was a celebrity. He was like an idol, and because he was on TV, it was like, oh, that guy is an expert. I'll never be able to do anything like that. But now you're watching people that have a YouTube channel. Having a YouTube channel is just 5 minutes on YouTube, make an account, and you have a channel. So I think that people, and because you can reach these people much easier, you just type a message on their social media and they can answer you if they want. It doesn't feel that distance. So I say, oh, if this guy can do it, I can do it, So I think there's the danger there. We don't relate the same way that we used to Steve Irwin with these people. That regarding if they are experts or know, which I put in doubt in some cases, the normalization of these behaviors, I think it's the danger rather than disease behavior, because people used to do that crazy shit years ago. It's just that, as I said, the way that it was shown, it was different. So, but yeah, apart of that, now I have to say that speaking all the bad things of hobby in Spain, there's amazing breeders and keepers in Spain, and I'm luckily know many of them, and I work with some of them, and I can tell you, like, for example, a very famous shop called Arquito in Madrid. He's an amazing keeper. Before even he had the shop, I knew about him because he used to breed Europlatus and Rhacodactylus and stuff. And for example, he bred the first albino Lichianus, which, to be honest, is something crazy, you know, if you think about it. And there's many other breeders. I know a guy called Joaquin also that used to breed Malayopiton timorensis. And at that time, there was almost no one breeding them. And the fact that they were bred in Spain, you know, and I don't know. I think we have a lot of good keepers, and every time we are leveling up a little bit. I think that there was a period of time we had like a bit of a bump of how the hobby was, like as we said, about cycles and about evolving. But I see with the interactions I had a lot lately, and the way that people are going, like shops and stuff like that, yeah, it's going, especially with the laws that we had now, people stop buying so many animals and are more like concentrating on, oh, actually I have a very cool species at home that I can do more, you know, like, so hopefully we take something positive from this stupid law.
Yeah, that's cool. Is there also a lot of outdoor keeping? Because I am really confined with most of the species I keep to my bedrooms, or German guys, often their basements. But is there a lot of outdoor keeping? I know some great like turtle and tortoise keepers in Spain.
Yeah. Now that I lived in Europe, I believe that there's not enough outdoor keeping in Spain, because it's crazy. If I would have known, or I would have realized earlier, like I would be probably one of the best chameleon breeders out there, because the amount of sun that we have and good weather, and that time also, I think that's an important thing, that while we were talking before about things that herpetoculture can learn from herpetology, is that how resistant are animals on adverse weather. You know, like when I was in India, I found this snake, the macrolepis, at 12 degrees, and it was so windy that I had an umbrella to try to take pictures, that it broke the umbrella. You know, it just went like the movies the other way. You know, and you think keeping this animal in captivity, you would never keep it at 12, 15 degrees, because you say like, oh, it's gonna die from a respiratory infection or a cold, you know. But I asked to the locals how cold it gets here, and they said, oh, it goes to 5 degrees sometimes in the winter, or even less at some days, you know. It's like these animals, they don't hibernate. What they do, you know, like they just go into hollow trees and under like places that they are a bit warmer, like holes. They just pass it, you know. So if they would understand, like chameleons also, like in Madagascar at certain height, it gets cold like 12, 14 degrees, even less depending which forest you are. I think that people would keep more. But yeah, there's a lot. One thing I don't know too much about is turtles and tortoise. But I met many people when I was working in the reptile shop, that when I was 18, that they had crazy collections of tortoise that they keep outdoors, obviously in Catalonia and in Valencia. And it's not even, in my opinion, the best place. Like south of Spain is crazy because it's good weather a lot of the year, except if you go more in the interior, they have more continental weather, like extremely hot and extremely cold. But all the coast and everything from Mediterranean coast, I think they can keep so many things, like 8 months a year at least, or 9 months, that they don't realize that. I know more people. I have my friend that keeps the venomous snakes. He has Cycluras, and he has some lizards like Hydrosaurus and stuff like that. And he has big cages outside, and he keeps them from March till October outside, which it's amazing the difference that makes in animals. But I think chameleons, that Spain should be one of the top. I don't know now if there's still a lot of breeders or what. They could have been one of the top chameleon breeders with the weathers that we have. But yeah, I think that seeing the facilities that some German guys has in their garden, and I think you showed in one video also, Stefan. I don't know if you guys are a guy from Germany that had all the species, the European species. That place was crazy. I remember when I lived in Brussels, a friend of mine telling me about a guy who kept so many species in his back garden in the Netherlands. And he got bombinas and piperas. So maybe it was you. I don't know. I was thinking now, but yeah, I was like,
that wasn't me. But yeah,
and I was like, no way you can keep these things outside. I was like, oh, of course you can. Like, if you see the weather that we have in certain areas, it would be easy with a little bit of logistic on the design of the enclosures. But yeah, I think that they should push it a little bit more, the outdoor keeping.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully a lot of Spanish listeners will listen to this and they're like,
I'll share that.
Oh yeah, that will be wonderful.
Yeah.
So we are hitting close to 2 hours. Flo, is there anything you felt like we left on the table or you're curious about?
Oh man, it was such a great talk. I really like your mindset, man. For real.
Thank you, man. For me, I feel more honored to be around you guys because I always look your pages and stuff, and I said, man, I wish I knew these people earlier in my career, or in my hobby also.
I mean, that's the best part, right? Meeting new people. It's always
yeah. It's just sometimes difficult to break the ice, and sometimes like the thing, you don't really know. If you would text me and you'd ask me about something on Instagram and I don't know who you are, I might not like think anymore and say, oh yeah, we talk and we don't conversate more. Sometimes you need like a reason to break that ice, and then you realize, oh man, that guy is quite cool. We can talk one day about this, or I can ask about this or that. So
yeah, for sure. No, man, at the moment I'm good than others, so my MacBook is almost dying. It has only 5% left.
Man, come on, dude. This is not professional.
It's okay.
Okay. Then maybe I think I had one last question. It's more like you've talked about your journey. There's all these elements. You're into it. Like full on, and it seems like everything you're doing leads to a certain way. So, what does the future look like for you? What's something you're planning on after you got your education? When you take it a step further, do you want to specialize? Do you want to move a certain place? To
be honest, I'm trying to figure it out right now a little bit, and I have many, like through the day, I have 20 ideas, of what I could do. It's just I like to touch a little bit of everything and till everything falls into place, and I just never close any door, and I'm open to many options. But I like a lot to travel, and in the last few years I did a lot of that, and I feel like I like to push more there, but I would not live privately, captive keeping aside. So I don't know, maybe I'll end up trying to make my own reptile exhibit for the public, open a place with amazing cages and stuff like that.
The cave.
Or maybe, the cave that for sure would be there. Or maybe I try to levitate towards like something more to wildlife, traveling, or I don't know. The thing is, like, it's difficult sometimes in certain areas to make a living. So I never close. I try to combine things, and now social media, this year I've been pushing it quite more and trying to grow a little bit more because it always opens more doors. So you never know. Maybe in a few years I'm just fully traveling and taking photos and videos and stuff, or maybe I'm working in a zoo. I'll be happy as long as I'm doing something that I enjoy, or it's related to reptiles. So I'm not too worried at this point.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Guillem, for...
Thank you to you for inviting me. It was great to have this talk today.
Yeah, I think I
Yeah,
really
it
enjoyed
was.
this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Flo, for introducing.
No. It's totally fine. I wanted to say the same thing. It was really, really
Yeah.
interesting
I
because I
think
also
for
didn't know you like that good. It is
Yeah,
like it was really cool. Yeah.
you're getting good at this,
I'm
Flo.
glad.
You're doing well.
No,
Well, I
you
think
guys,
for us, as just something I want to say also for the listeners, for us, we had some great episodes already. I think this is again a great example of what we're hoping to do with this podcast. So I'm really happy about that, and it just shows, yeah, what this hobby can do for people. I think so. Really cool, great example. Thank you
yeah.
so much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
Where do we need to send people if they want to see your travels and your channel? Because to me, it's hard to hear that those herping videos are looked at the less. I'm also a bit tired and that. And I see that with more channels because to me as a keeper, those are the most valuable videos. So please, where do people need to go to check out those
So
videos?
my YouTube and my Instagram, it's the same as Herpetoloco, which I'll type it for you to put it. It means herp crazy.
Yeah, perfect.
Herpetoloco together or separate also will appear. Yeah, I have a YouTube channel under the name Instagram, and then I have my personal Instagram, which I use for reptile photography about all the reptiles I see. Herpetoloco is more like social media, shorts, reels and stuff like that. And Guillem Lima, which is my name, it's what I put all my photography, which I like this one and stuff. I enjoy photography as a hobby, which only reptile photography, to be honest, not general photography. If you want to see reptile, snakes and stuff, Guillem Lima. And if you want to see content like traveling, herping and terrarium stuff, Herpetoloco, YouTube or Instagram or even TikTok also, even though I don't use it too much, but all of them.
Awesome.
Florian is mute. No.
Oh yeah, it's mute.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
No worries.
I thought maybe as social media master you wanted to end this one.
Yeah, I was like almost the MacBook is almost dying, so now I had to get my cable. Yeah, if you like to follow us, jump on Instagram at European Herpetoculture Podcast. Yeah, give us a 5-star rating if you liked the episode. And please ask us questions. We are always open for that. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. And I wish you like a great day.
At least we did. We had a wonderful time.
Yeah.
Thanks to everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao. What's the Spanish?
Adiós.
Adiós. Ah, yeah.
Hasta luego.